Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? We are back talking about all things The Shining, and now, finally, we reach our section talking about the new movie out in theaters, Dr. Sleep. We're going to be getting into our review, and we literally just asked, should we do spoilers or not?
Yeah.
And we still haven't decided. I think we should. Let's start out with no spoilers, and then eventually we'll get to spoilers. How about that?
Okay, cool. Because you're right. Based on the box office. Maybe not a lot of people see
Homies
it.
did not see this movie.
Go out and see it.
Yeah,
go out and see it.
Go watch this movie. Go watch Dark Fate. Go watch. Just have fun at the theaters, guys.
Dark Fate.
Yeah, we don't need that right now.
Just throw that in there. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, sure.
Just go watch it.
Is that Warner Brothers? Or is that Paramount?
Paramount.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
but
Paramount's struggling, man.
It's whatever.
Support
So
Paramount.
maybe go see Dark Fate.
Yeah, go see Dark Fate for sure.
And go see Dr. Sleep, because I think it's fair to say, am I speaking for everyone here? We all enjoyed this movie, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
I dug it a lot.
I think some people more than others. I think you loved it. Did you love it as well?
I really liked it. Yeah.
Tell me about it. I'll start with you.
Tell you about the plot.
Tell me about your thoughts on the movie.
It was really fun. I thought it was a really fun movie. I again, going into it, had literally no idea what it was, so I'm just taking in this journey for the first time. I really like seeing the ideas expanded in this movie, and from the first Shining, particularly, The Shining is a lot about sidekicks and psychic powers and abilities, and then this movie is like a further evolution of that, where it's almost like these sidekicks become like witches, you know what I mean, where they're doing like actual sacrifices and sucking up this soul energy. Now, what for me is interesting is the first Shining is kind of like you can interpret it as is this really happening, as this like actual supernatural stuff, or is this just alcoholism infused things? But this movie clearly brings a lot of stuff to the forefront that definitely demonstrates like the magic is real, or the psychic powers are real. So it's I thought it was great in that sense. I thought for a lot of it did its own original things. Yeah. And I think for the parts that it needed to homage the original Shining, it did that really well too. So
absolutely.
I'm with it.
How about you, Sabrina?
Yeah, I think we go further into The Shine and everything. I think people can understand it a lot more after watching this movie versus The Shining. It's a little more vague there. Like we get an idea, we get a sense, but now we see like more people across the country have it, more people around the world have it. Right. And certain people use that for good or for like evil,
Right.
So it kind of shows both sides of this ability.
Yeah. I personally, that's what kind of hooked me right away in the movie, is the fact that, like you said, RB3, the first Shining is obviously a spooky movie and a horror movie, but this one's straight up all supernatural stuff.
Yeah,
all
fantasy. This is
fantasy, like it's
movie.
all supernatural. Like, and I was like, count me in. One of my favorite shows of all time is Supernatural, and I love supernatural stuff. Like to me, that is my bread and butter. That and sci-fi, obviously, but supernatural stuff I'm really into, just because I'm actually low key really into that stuff. But on a side note, the fact that this movie was just like you said, strap in, bro, because this is about witches on witches, battling other witches, battling psychic powers, and I'm like, hell yes, that is literally what I want in a movie. So I think that kind of pulled me towards the movie a lot, but I really feel like a lot of this movie, what makes it really good is Danny's character evolving through the trauma he went through, and knowing that everything he went through actually happened, knowing the repercussions of his childhood and the effect that it had on his mother, because for crying out loud, like the woman was tortured,
right.
and how he was able to overcome the literal demons of his father, because his father literally becomes part of the hotel now. But it's one of those things where the alcohol demon, for lack of a better word, is still kind of haunting Danny, and it's been haunting him his whole life. And he has to slay that ghost, slay that monster, just as much as he has to slay the witches in this movie. And that goes hand in hand with his character, and how the alcoholism effect is still ingrained in his blood, in his ideology, and he has to overcome that just as much as he has to overcome actual witches that Rebecca Ferguson plays. Right. And I was like, that's fucking genius. That's so cool. So that's probably the biggest thing I took away from this movie. But as a Shining sequel, how does this do as a Shining sequel? Does it feel like a Shining sequel, Sabrina?
Well, a lot in the third act. I think like we really get a lot of that, obviously like blatant, like, oh, look, the Overlook Hotel and everything. And I just think it's a really good example of like a union and an alliance between The Shining and then also Stephen King's stories, like what he kind of wanted in the story and then what Kubrick did. I think Mike Flanagan does a really great job of like blending those two into something and paying homage to both. So that's something that I really admired that he took on, because taking the mantle from like Kubrick and also adapting a King story, like a Stephen King story, like that's a lot to take on. And he did Haunting of Hill House, which you guys haven't seen. But if you watch that, you would know, like, you're like, this guy's ready for something like this. And he clearly showed it with everything that he did in that one.
Did you read the book on Dr.
did.
Sleep? Oh, tell me about the adaptation aspect of this whole movie.
So it's way more faithful than
Interesting.
Kubrick's. Yeah, it's way more faithful.
So this is what happens to Danny.
Basically, obviously with the changes that were made in The Shining, like The Shining book to the film, he kind of adapted to that. Okay. But it's a lot more faithful. So all of this, it has that linear timeline where it continues the story on from when he's a kid, and then time jumps to, you know, him being an adult and the effects it has, and with the alcoholism, with the things that are happening around him. Halloran, the way he teaches him about the boxes, that's all in it. And yeah, with Abra. Abra. That whole storyline is, the way they did it, it's definitely, it's really
great
faithful
in this movie, man.
Oh my god,
she's so good. Her character, her acting, like, it was a really solid idea to have that representation of Danny
definitely
being inside this little girl, because that's kind of what it represents. What do you think of that aspect of the movie, of making the protagonist being Danny, but also kind of having this side protagonist?
Yeah, that was the big surprise for me, because, like I said, I only really saw the poster for this movie, so I thought it was just Ewan McGregor, but it was really Abra's story too, like almost, you know, simultaneously, and we see her almost lose just as much, if not more, than Danny throughout this story. So we really see a lot of her emotional impact. I think it's a great star-making performance from the young actress who played Abra. I'm not particularly sure of her name.
Kylie Curran.
Yeah.
Kylie Curran. Yeah, she did an amazing job with that, with this performance. And I think even more importantly, the fact that this movie goes out of its way to like have that representation of a young black girl having these same powers as Danny in this story, I think is really cool. I mean, I don't know if it was like that. It was probably like that in the book too. But it's cool seeing that put to the forefront of this movie.
And the fact that she's so like, she has the best head on her shoulder. She knows what she's doing. She sets up trap for Rebecca Ferguson's character. Yeah. Like she's
super powerful.
She's super powerful. She has her shit together. Like, she isn't a little kid that Danny is like has to save because she's so helpless. I love the scene where she sets up that trap for Rose. Is her name Rose the Hat, Rebecca Ferguson's character, and she comes in with that little anime wig, because that's kind of how she imagines herself. She watches anime, and I was like, oh, a girl after my own heart. And she imagines herself almost being like an anime character inside her whatever shine, whatever that is, that shine.
Like the memory mind
power. And she has that blue wig because you see all around her room. She has like the anime figures and anime posters and Ruby posters. And I was like, oh, I see you, girl. Yeah. But it's that idea of like, if I were in my shine, I have like Super Saiyan hair and it's like I'm glowing like Goku. Nice. And I have that, but it's that portrayal of like how you see yourself in this power aspect. And I love that. I was like, that's a cool little detail that I don't know if it was Flanagan or Stephen King, but that idea of like how you envision yourself inside the shine is yourself being powerful and being in control and someone that, you know, takes charge. And that's how she views her world through fiction, and she can portray that in her dream world.
That's how you know, if in my shine I'd be 6'10", basketball player. You know what I mean? Like, it's the best me possible.
Me too. I make myself taller too, man. I'd be like, I'm this like glowing anime character.
Nice.
Freaking like ripped for no reason.
Should we like spoil over into the?
Let's do it, man.
Spoil over into the spoiler section. Roll over into spoiler section.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Tell me about the spoiler aspect of this movie. Obviously, I can't lie. When Danny's character was like, "Oh, I know where I'm taking you," and I was like, "Oh, hell yeah, we're going back!" And he's like, "We're going back to the Overlook," and I was like, "Ah, I know." And then the score plays, and they're doing the drive up, and I was like, "You got me, bro.
I almost
you
wondered if that was the same footage they used for the original movie.
I heard that it is.
Really?
It's the same footage, just rendered to make it look like it's like nighttime.
What?
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's what
I was like,
somebody
the
else
camera
said.
movement looks too eerily.
Isn't that crazy?
similar,
Yeah.
to the
But
original.
I thought the same thing.
I heard some people criticizing this on Twitter and on some reviews, but where they're like, "Oh, I don't like that they went back to the," and I was like, "Oh, I love that. I love the idea of him being like, I'm facing off against this powerful witch. I'm going to take her to the most haunted ass place I know.
Yeah.
That's going to kick her ass because the whole place is like a giant demon den. It's literally like a hellmouth.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, of course I'm taking her there. I loved it. I was like, that's the coolest thing. That's a cool way to play all the greatest hits and still be
in one
like
setting.
realistic.
Yeah. And have the movie, because I mean, for the most part, I mean, like, and this is why we're getting the spoilers. When they started shooting people, like, in
I loved it.
I was like, this is a Shining movie?
Yeah,
Like, what
right?
happened?
I loved it.
And I was like, damn,
I was like,
okay.
shoot their asses,
just
bro.
shooting
Shoot 'em up,
witches.
shoot 'em up, shoot 'em up.
But then when you get back to the Overlook, it's like, okay, now it feels like we're back in the tone.
Yeah.
of the original movie. But
What do you think of them going back to the Overlook Hotel?
So it is different
Mm-hmm.
from like the novel. I don't want to say any spoilers for like the book too much, but they had to do that. So it kind of like ventures off a little bit, but I think it's really good because they, in a sense, do the same thing in the novel. They changed it a little bit for this one, but I like it because it harnesses that energy. The Overlook does that. They have to be there. He knows with his boxes, he knows how to get Rose the Hat. Yeah, so I think I think Mike Flanagan did a really good job of deciding how to take the change of the story and make it into something that still, pays homage to everything.
exactly.
What I
Yeah.
loved the most about that entire third act was the idea of Danny going in by himself first and literally facing off against his father and kind of having to come to terms with, obviously, the alcoholism aspect is all over this movie, as I said before.
Absolutely.
But that to me is Ewan's best scene and how he delivers such a good performance. He's so freaking good. People don't give Ewan McGregor enough credit, in my opinion. I think he's one of the best actors working right now. And that scene proves it because you can see so much pain and emotion and almost like still conflictedness about the idea of like just taking that drink and how he's just trying to be as sober as he can just so he can defy his father. It's not even like it's an anti-alcohol movie. It's much more of him just facing off against the sins of his father and the demons of his father. And I love that scene because it really shows how he has to defeat the monsters in the Overlook, the demons in the Overlook, before he sets them loose on Rebecca Ferguson. And I was like, that's cool. That's freaking cool.